As some of you may know, Hunter is by far the worst class of the original 9 and Wild. It's not even really comparable how bad it is. And even in recent, expansions, Hunter's been worse than Demon Hunter. Questline Demon Hunter is a very good deck. And what's Hunter have? Beast Hunter, which has been not a playable real deck for a long time. And technically, up until this expansion, Death Knight wasn't even a wild class. So that should tell you how terrible Hunter is as a class in Wild. So, just like Mage, I want to do some things that would rework Hunter and really make it actually playable in the format. One of the things that I and many other people constantly criticize for Hunter and Wild is the really bad quality of one drops. You have things like Costume Singer, which was okay when it had 2 attack, but that got nerfed. You have, Trinket Tracker, which is technically a good one drop. It just doesn't fit into literally any hunter deck. Or you have things like Wolpertinger and Timberwolf and Alley Cat, which only really work in Beast Hunter and nowhere else. So I think that Hunter just needs a standalone one drop that really helps it. It doesn't even have to be an aggro one drop because Hunter, has such a strong hero power that you don't technically need to give it aggro ones and twos for it to be able to use them in wild decks. One way I think you can achieve this is to look at a card like Fiery Bat. Currently, it is 1 mana, 2/1 beast. Death Rattle, deal 1 damage to random enemy. You could take this in a more aggressive tone by changing the Death Rattle to be, much better because realistically speaking, this card is so utterly significantly worse than Shadow Bomber that it's unreal. So you could say, do something like this, make it a 3/1 with Death Rattle deal 3 damage. It fits the power level of a card like Shadow Bomber a lot better, but it's still random and tied to a Death Rattle to make it, worse for not dealing 3 damage to your own face. Or you could do something like this. Fiery Bat, 1 mana, 2/1 beast, Death Rattle, deal 1 damage to 3 random enemies. This makes it still more defensive and lets you play it in a lot more aggro decks while having the ability to fight for board with it. It doesn't deal 3 damage face because there's 3 random enemies instead of just deal 3 damage randomly split amongst enemies, which would be something like Arcade Missiles, how that's worded, making it all go face if there's an empty board. I think this, gives the card a lot more power without making it just a strict face card, which I guess Blizzard doesn't want Hunter to have. Another bat, actually. I thought this would be an interesting change. You have Batty Guest. It's a 1 mana 1/1, terrible stat line. Death Rattle, summon a 2/1 bat, which is pretty weak overall for a card, especially in Wild, especially in Hunter. It doesn't have any tribal synergy, so the card doesn't really make any sense anywhere. So what if you change it to be something like this? Something like this. 1 mana 1/1, Rush. Death Rattle, summon a 2/1 bat with Rush. Obviously, this is absurdly strong. I won't even try and deny it. This is a very strong card. However, this is trying to push the power level of Hunter as a class in Wild, and across the board, Hunter has bad one drops. You can give Hunter a really strong one drop that puts it on the same level as cards like Void Touch Attendant, as cards like Fillet Fighter, as cards like Jolly Roger. It's definitely fair. This, however, gives you the ability to fight for board more proactively with Rush and another Rush Death Rattle, as well as still, if there is no Rush and minions to hit, it's still the same strengths as the original card. A card that gets brought up a lot when people are talking about how terrible Hunter is as a class is Quick Shot. This effect is so completely outdated that if your hand is empty, draw a card. They've only printed one card that even kind of similarly goes into this archetype in the last 5, 6 years with Ferocious Howl. So the empty hand thing in Hunter, not a thing. They scrapped that and put it into Demon Hunter, and it's good in Demon Hunter, of course, because they have way better cards to make it work. So a really easy fix for Quick Shot is to just wow, deal 3 damage, draw a card. You could make the argument to just make this the same wording: Shadow Bomb, or Dark Bomb, deal 3 damage. If it kills something, draw a card, and that's probably fine. The card would probably still not be worth playing at that point. But making Quick Shot actually a viable Dark Bomb option in Hunter is something that the class really needs. Almost every other class has a good Dark Bomb option. It's just Hunter really doesn't. Their best thing is like now you have Grievous Bite, and Grievous Bite is a pretty unplayable garbage card. So like Yeah, right. This is not the only one though. Kill Command, I believe, could be a Dark Bomb card. You would just obviously change it to 2 mana, deal 3 damage, which is like Dark Bomb, but this one's secondary effect is a condition. If you control a beast, deal 5 damage instead. Obviously, we all know Kill Command, it's a very iconic card, but in current Hearthstone, plus 2 damage is effect or 2 damage is pretty much worth a drawing a card, worth healing 3 damage. In the case of Drain Soul, Bash, and oh, I can't remember what it's called, and Penance and Priest. It's then equivalent. It's definitely equivalent to things like Serrated Bone Spike, which is your next card costs 2 less. I believe that this is completely fair for Hunter. In Wild, obviously, I have to say this a million times. It doesn't. These changes aren't trying to affect Wild and Standard. I don't give a shit about Wild and Standard. It's really boring. Or Wild and Standard, Hunter and Standard is really boring and clunky. But Hunter and Wild is really boring and clunky. So that's why I think that it needs, mana cost tacked off or effects, made easier to make it even comparable to the other classes. It's pretty clear that Hunter is significantly worse than the other one, so I don't think making a card like this really breaks the class any more than what other classes get every expansion. Although you could make the argument that the kill command option would be too strong, changing aim shot to 2 mana should functionally have no issues. Aim shot requires you to spend an additional 2 or 1 mana on your hero power to get this effect rather than just having a beast on board, so it is even harder to pull off than kill command. Plus, does it really affect anyone if even Hunter is a strong deck? You can add aim shot to that deck and odd Hunter loses it, I guess. It's not really that big of an issue. This also pushes the questline hunter archetype a little bit, probably a little too much for some people's liking. And if that were the case, you could easily change it to your hero power deals 1 more damage. That would still probably be fair, relatively. Or no, it'd still be strong, is what I should say, and definitely a lot more fair. Or obviously, the easier option is deal 2 and then deal 2. This one is a little more boring and it doesn't actually align with the Dark Bomb, which is what I want Hunter to have as a class. But, it's a little more fair if you are worried about a card like this. So this one I can't really show the change that I would make for it with Deathstalker Rexar, but I would make it so the hero power pool was more curated to not be garbage. Of course, that is way, way, way too much work for Blizzard to put in, especially for a super old legendary like Deathstalker Rexar. But we're talking about an ideal world where they'll even change a single card, and Rexar desperately needs its beast pool to be curated to not have 80 some percent of the pool be unusable. The way the pool works is it chooses minions that cost 5 or less with like keywords and effects, and then the effect uh, of the card can't be too long, and it's very weird and convoluted that most people don't even know how it works fully. I don't even know how it works fully. I could not. There are sometimes that minions should be in the pool that just aren't, and there's sometimes that minions that shouldn't be in the pool that are. So it's very awkward to really talk about this card because a lot of people like to say, oh, just make it so the hero power reduces the cost of the beast by 2, or make it so the battle cry deals 3 damage. Those wouldn't make the card playable in any aspect. The big issue with this card is that you're just never getting anything good from your hero power. Value in just getting big minions doesn't do anything in current year, so you would have to get like a very curated, powerful pool of beasts to make it even a playable card, which is very unfortunate. This card is just designed in a way that it sucks. It will continue to suck. It will always be bad after it rotates from standard. It's just the way the card works, and it's very unfortunate. Another card that functionally sucks and can't really be changed is Zul'jin. Look at it this way. When you see Jace as a 8 mana minion that only fires fell spells in a class that has spells that actually target face or only target enemies, and that card is bad. So then you have Zul'jin, which is a hero card. So It's already hard to use. It's 10 mana, and then in a class that doesn't have non-targeted face damage, so you can't really use it as a finisher. But you can't really use it as like a value bomb either because it's 10 fucking mana in 2024. It was useless in Wild when it came out in like 2018. So the card just functionally doesn't work, and I think it should go through a full rework personally. Uh, you could make it just say targets enemies, like targets enemies. You could say targets enemy or targets enemies if possible. I think it's the way it works. You make it say targets enemies if possible. You could even probably make it, 8 mana at that point. And I think the card would finally be decent at that state. It would still probably be terrible, all things considered, but it would give Hunter, something interesting to do later in the game. The thing about Hunter is one of the worst classes at all stages of the game, except for maybe turns 3 and 4. Turns 3 and 4 in Hunter are really strong across the board because you have things like Dread Scale Bloom. You have things like your hero power setups in even Hunter with your micro combos. You have Beast Hunter getting a really wide board and using your new location or drawing a lot of cards at the same time. Uh, the thing is before that, Hunter has nothing in terms of strong flood, strong board fill, strong removal, strong anything. And after that, every hunter card that costs, 7 or more mana is terrible. Every single hunter card that costs more is that much more is bad, uh, which is awkward. Like, yeah, you can make the argument for Hydralodon and Stranglethorn Heart, but those cards aren't individually good, which is another issue with Hunter, is Hunter as a class needs to have strong individual cards because of the terrible card draw. And those cards just are not good individually, which is why, something like Zul'jin, which can be a super strong standalone card in a Spell Hunter deck, should exist. Speaking of Spell Hunter, I think you have to make changes to Rockdalar if that were the case, and I'm not sure how you would do it. I think that you should make the card better, of course, but what way? You don't want it to just stay at 7 mana because that's way so incredibly expensive. But I think you could make an argument to put it to something like 3 mana. Hear me out. Hear me out. And then instead of fill your hand with hunter spells, it's add, let's say, 4 hunter spells to your hand that cost 5 or less. Of course, this is a gigantic change away from the original card. But the way that Wild you know, as a game mode works is that having more strict conditions on your cards makes them better because you can have more predictability, you can have less variance, and you need to put some restrictions on cards to make them playable. I'm just going to say it. Rockdalar as a 3 mana weapon with adding 4 random hunter spells to your hand, it already has a restriction of no minions. I think that the card can be pushed to be more powerful because it has a restriction. Uh, this might be too powerful. It might need to be like 4 mana to be honest with you. But again, like I'm saying, I want to push the power level of the class while still staying in line of the core ideas of these cards. And I think that this does that beautifully. It gives you a very powerful early tool, which is 3 and 4 mana, like I'm talking about for Hunter, and that's the kind of design that Hunter has for like that is emergently evolved in Wild. Is it's really strong 3 mana plays that either transition you into a win game or help you fight for a board, or you lose the game because they weren't enough. So I think that this falls in that line. One minor thing that I want to talk about, just as the last thing in this video, is that I think as a sweeping change, all hunter cards that are quote unquote big hunter cards should say 4 or more. Like Mystery Egg, miniaturize Death Rattle, get a copy of a random beast in your deck that costs 4 or more, it costs 5 less. Like I'm saying with Hunter, your 3 mana cards are your best cards possible. which means you have Dreadscale. Dreadscale is your 3 mana super powerful beast. Mystery Egg counter synergizes with a deck that runs Dreadscale and Big Beasts at the same time, and that's really bad. Another card that goes with this is Pet Collector. Summon a beast from your deck that costs 5 or less. Yes, the wording would be clunky, but I think you could word it in a way like this: 5 mana 4/4 Battlecry, summon a beast from your deck that costs 4 or 5. This way, you would be able to run your super powerful beast, Dreadscale, the arguably, and I think so, by far best card in the entire class, in big Beast Hunter decks. Now, would this be a little too strong? I don't think so by any means, because late game Hunter decks fundamentally don't work. Every other class in the entire game is better at going late, I guess, except Death Knight, because I mean Death Knight's also terrible late, but every other class is better at going late. And if they're not, they kill you before you get to that point. Or it's Questline Demon Hunter and they just steal all your cards and then you can't really do anything from there. But I think this kind of changing these cards to be 4 or 5, things like that, gives you a lot more powerful mid game that Hunter is supposed to be known for. Hunter's supposed to be known for their mid game endings on like 6 and 7 rather than 4, 3, 4, 5 like Pirate Rogue and even Shaman and Shadow Priest. But they can't do that because their tools to end out games are non-existent, because you have to run these ultra powerful early game tools to even be able to compete, which leaves you not actually having anything useful anyway. So if you have a card like Pet Collector fights for board incredibly well by summoning things like Witchwood Grizzly, and kills your opponent incredibly well by summoning things like Trampling Rhino. I think that these changes push Hunter in the right direction without taking anything too crazy far, and I think that this is what we should be doing for the class in Wild. If you agree or disagree on any of the examples I showed for cards that should be changed, let me know below. If you think that there's anything that really desperately should be changed, that'd be nice. I don't think Hunter is one of the classes that needs nerfs. If at most it should be Dreadscale to 4 mana, but then you would just have the issues with like something like Pet Collector or Mystery Egg, like I'm saying right now. That is the only card I think that should be changed in Hunter, if anything at all. And I only think the class needs buffs. Like, it's so terrible. It's not like the other broken classes that you can point out specific cards that need nerfed. Anyway, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.